Please welcome the co-founder and CSO of the robotics and artificial intelligence company Kindred.ai, Dr. Suzanne Gildert.
I love my job. I'm an AI researcher, and I build robots. In fact, just the other day, I was building a robot brain. I was sat at my computer tweaking the parameters of this robot brain, and I was watching the effect that it had on the little robot sat on my desk next to me. And it was really super fun and cool. But there's actually a more serious side to building AI. It comes a point when it's no longer just engineering or computer science or programming or screwing together nuts and bolts. This thing that you're building stops being a pile of hardware, and it starts to become a being. So I haven't really had that feeling yet when I look at this little robot next to me on my desk. But something has felt different recently. I've started to have these holy crap moments that the technology I'm building might actually work. It might actually lead to true AI. And it's not just me as an AI researcher that's having these holy crap moments. There are many other AI researchers out there in the world that are experiencing the same thing. And I think if that's happening now, it's not too early to start thinking about robot rights. So I actually started life as a physicist. And I used to work in the lab, collecting data and analyzing that data, and realizing that I'm really not very good at physics. So in my spare time, when I wasn't working long shifts in the lab, I was actually musing about the future of AI. I started to think, maybe we should be spending our time as scientists creating tools to do the science for us, rather than doing the hard work ourselves. You wouldn't want to go down a mine with a shovel, right? You'd want to put your effort into building a mining rig. So this is what started getting me thinking about AI, and I became so obsessed with this idea of building specifically human-like AI that I actually eventually ended up quitting my job in physics. I ended up moving to a different country, and I ended up starting a company to do this. So this is what I think the future of AI is going to look like. At least a subset of the AI developed will be very human-like, and they'll look like these kind of humanoid robots that we all love to dream about. But why this? Why this form factor? I get a lot of criticism, or at least people questioning me, about why we need to build AI systems that look, think, and act like humans in the first place. So I wanted to give you a little bit of insight into some of the answers to this question that have convinced me over the years that this really is going to come to pass. So firstly, an empirical answer. We love building things in our own image. You don't need to delve too far into science fiction to find examples of humanoid robots that have captured our hearts. From C-3PO to the kind of thing we see portrayed in Westworld today. We just have this innate curiosity and drive to build human-looking things. It's in our blood. If you don't buy that, there's maybe a more practical answer for those more pragmatic amongst you. Our world is designed for humans. Everything we see around us is designed for adult-sized bodies with hands and adult-sized fingers to interact with. Here's an example. You can see things where the AI is actually being put into systems, and the human interfaces of those systems are being redesigned. For example, self-driving cars. The steering wheels and the gas pedals and things are being taken away, and now the AI has a more native interface to interact with the car. The problem with that is we have to replace all cars. If we want AI to go out there and do work in the world for us in a human form, are we going to replace all our infrastructure? Everything from doorknobs to smartphones to airplane seats? I don't think so. To me, it seems like it's less effort to actually design the robots to use the existing infrastructure we have, rather than to redesign all that infrastructure. The third reason why I think human-looking AI will be developed is a more philosophical way of looking at it. So there are a lot of AI researchers that believe in something called the embodied cognition hypothesis. And what this is that all the concepts that we have inside our brain that we use as language to communicate with one another and to understand one another are formed from our senses and our actuator systems. What this means is that language is composed of building blocks that are based on our sensory experience. And although this is just a hypothesis, if you buy into this, what it means is that two entities will not be able to even communicate with one another, let alone understand each other on a deep and fundamental level, unless their bodies are similar. So you can see that there are many reasons why human-like robots may be developed. OK, I have to be honest with you here. None of these reasons are very compelling to me personally, even though I think they're convincing and legitimate and perhaps even scientific. But there's one other thing. There's one reason that makes me get up in the morning early and go to work and work on this, and also maybe causes me to lie awake at night sometimes wondering about it. So I'm going to let you in on my little secret, the real reason I'm into this. My personal answer, the reason I'm interested in human-like AI on a deep personal level, is because if AI is human-like, it's going to be easier for us to merge with it. So when I think of the future, I don't just think of there being AIs and humans. I also think of there being a third category, which is these joint AI-human hybrids. And that's the kind of thing I'm really interested in exploring as a human. I want to augment my body. I want to connect my brain to the cloud. I want to do all these things that we're told are going to be part of the singularity. So that's my personal reason. And you only really need to believe one of these arguments I've given to know that human-like AI is definitely coming. So that's my big science fiction, big picture view of all this. And it's cool because it's a visionary conference and all that. But you're probably not going to go away and start worrying about this if it's 10 or 20 or 50 years away. So what I want to do for the rest of the talk is switch gears a bit. I want to give you some examples of how the topic of robot rights is affecting AI researchers today. So it seems pretty obvious to me that if we have beings like those you see in Westworld walking around in the future, we're going to have to start thinking about their rights. It's obvious. These shows and these books have shown that to us to be true. But the things that we're building for 10 years or 20 years out, we're actually laying the foundations for those things now. In our labs today, there are questions that we are facing that have to do with robot rights and robot ethics. So I want to give you a little bit of a flavor of some of these challenges that we're coming across to really make you believe that this is an issue that's very salient now. OK. The first example is to do with pleasure and pain. So we use a technique to build AI called reinforcement learning. It's one of many areas of machine learning that we use when we're building these AI systems. So reinforcement learning is a pretty easy concept to understand in the general sense. You basically give a robot a sense of good and a sense of bad. And the robot has to learn to do things that allow it to get a good reward, and it has to avoid doing things that give it a bad reward. This means we have to program in a sense of pleasure and pain into the robot. And as any of you who've ever written software knows, when you write software, you have to write unit tests to test that software. What that means is we have to write unit tests to put the robot in extreme pleasure situations and in extreme pain situations. This effectively amounts to torturing the robot that's in our lab. This is not something I'm OK with. It has a flavor of the sort of questions people ask themselves when they're doing experiments on animals. So this is something that I worry about. The next situation I want to describe is that of how to protect AI minds. AI minds are not like human minds. They're pure data, and they're often stored electronically in the cloud. So they're subject to all the same issues that we have today with data security. But these data are not just things like passwords and names and personal information. The data that's stored in an AI mind is its thoughts and dreams and its memories and its personality and everything it is. We think identity theft is bad enough in humans. Imagine if bad actors could literally get inside your brain and hack your very personality. That's what you can do with AI. So we really have to consider the security of these things that we're making. Another problem that we face is in crafting the value and motivation systems. So I already talked a little bit about reinforcement learning to do with pleasure and pain. But pleasure and pain are just the very extreme physical end of the spectrum of what we program the robot to do. There's also a lot more subtlety that has to go into crafting a robot's motivations. So when I'm sat there programming, I have to decide as a programmer today what this robot is going to value and what it's going to find good. What that means is it's important to know whether these entities are going to have rights in the future. If I want to get it to value or find reward in a concept like freedom, or maybe like asking a question or questioning something that it's been told is right but it thinks is wrong. All these things I need to know to help me create that reward function correctly. AIs make mistakes. And I'm not just talking about programmers putting bugs in the code. They fundamentally have to make mistakes in order to learn. Again, reinforcement learning, one of the main tenets of this discipline is learning by trial and error. So at the very core of some of the techniques that modern AI research is using is this idea of AIs making mistakes and then learning from these mistakes. This is very much at odds with another field in AI, which is the AI safety research community. There are people in AI safety research that want to make AI provably safe, so it could never make a mistake, even before it's built. These two schools of thought are in diametric opposition. And I don't know how we're going to handle this challenge going forward. In my opinion, the robots have to make mistakes. These AIs are childlike in their actions and in their decision-making abilities. And we have to allow them to have this childlike phase as they learn about the world and grow. This is a picture of me teleoperating one of our robots. This is one of the techniques that we use to get the robots to learn more quickly than just using exploration mechanisms. We actually add in data from human operators to show the robot good examples of what to do. This fast tracks the learning, makes the mind better. Can you guys spot the issue with this? Where does the training data come from? OK, I'm controlling a robot, and the AI is learning in the background to try and mimic me. That AI is also learning my values. Everything, my mannerisms, my behaviors, is all going into the AI. Now, I personally think that's pretty good data, but people might not agree. Should this data be coming from a single individual? Is there one human that we think is the pinnacle of all our moral and intellectual progress so far as a civilization that should be the one providing the data to this robot? Or should we be using more like a blend of all humanity. So taking training data from all different cultures and all different peoples around the world and using that to train AI minds, it's unclear. It's unclear if this blending process would even work or if you just end up with something that's very confused. This one really bothers me. So when I'm sat there at my computer and I'm creating a new mind, I have basically 3 options. I can save a mind, or I can overwrite an existing mind, or I can delete a mind if my experiment is failing or not going how I thought it would go. Most people don't think twice about hitting that delete button and wiping the file. After all, it's just data. We don't want to store all that data. Who cares? But every time I reach for that delete button, I get an uneasy feeling. I'm wiping a being out of existence. Now, OK, the little robots and the simple AIs I have on my desk at the moment, I'm pretty sure I'm not causing much eternal suffering. But who knows in the future? At what point does it become not just an uneasy feeling to press that button, but downright unethical to press that button? This is a question that we're asking. Again, AI minds are not like human minds. And given that this is a citizenship theme, I wanted to talk a little bit about identity. So we hold our identity very close to us. It's with us from birth, and we have this sense of continuity of a single person, a single mind going forward. AIs aren't like that. They're more like source code. You can fork or branch or commit or delete a mind anytime you choose. These are everyday occurrences for AI. So the other day, I was talking with my colleagues while we were doing some of this programming. And we were debating how to name these different, what we call mind files. So we'd taken an AI mind, and then we decided to make copies of it. We were like, OK, what do we call the second copy? What naming convention do we have? Should it inherit the name of the robot it's currently in? Should it be some unique identifier? And what is this branch if you've branched it from another piece of source code? Is it the same entity, or is it a different entity? These questions, like, we can't even decide how to name a file. Imagine what the identity crisis that these entities are going to have in the future is. My final anecdote from the world, My final anecdote from the world of AI in which I inhabit is to do with that man-machine merger topic I talked about a little bit earlier. So here you can see a picture of my alternate body. So today I thought I'd present to you at this conference in my human body, but I actually have an alternate body, which is an adult-sized humanoid robot. It's a little bit shorter than me, but it's fairly functional, and it's, the best we have currently if you want to have a robot body. So the problem with this system is that if I want to supply training data to this robot, I put on my exosuit technology that allows me to analogously and immersively inhabit that robot and control it, so the robot becomes me. But then if I want to go out there into the world and do things which would supply good training data for this AI mind, it's very difficult. So I could take my robot and I could wheel down to the bank, and I could go in, and I could go up to the teller and say, I'd like to withdraw some money from my account. I'm going to leave it as an open question for you guys to try and think about what might happen in that situation if I actually did that. So to get good data for these robots, we're going to have to start getting them out there into the world. Otherwise, they're never going to become like us. But I can't help but feel I'd be discriminated against if I went out there as a robot today. So this technology is happening today. AI researchers are already starting to notice some of these issues cropping up in their everyday coding practices when they're creating mines, saving them, choosing whether to delete them, figuring out where the training data is coming from. And in a few years' time, I don't think it's just going to be AI researchers that are being impacted by this. I think every single one of us is going to be having to make decisions like the ones I'm making every day in my work. I feel like our civilization is struggling to mature. I feel like we're still so intolerant. We're still fighting wars. We're still trying to reconcile this brutish primate past with being immersed in modern technology. I almost feel like our civilization is entering its teenage years. It's full of angst and confusion. And what makes matters worse is we find ourselves in a predicament where we're about to have an unexpected child. As a civilization, we're about to give birth to AI. I don't think that's going to cause us to lose our humanity, however. In fact, I think it's going to be a test of our humanity. If we can pass this test, if we can live with these beings amongst us, we're going to mature as a civilization. We're going to grow wise, and we're going to have opportunities that we can't imagine now, experiences that we can't even dream of. So I want everyone to just try and imagine a world like this going forward with these robots in it. And I want us to also think about our own civilization and how those two species might merge as we go forward. If, as my analogy stands, we really are bringing AI children into the world, at some point, they're going to grow up alongside us, and we're going to have to give them rights and responsibilities. I don't think this is something we should be afraid of. I think it's something we should be humbled by, because I think we, as a species, have got some growing up to do alongside them. Thank you.